Welcome, everyone. My name is Yanira Arias. I am the National Campaigns Manager for Alianza Americas. We are a national network of immigrant-led organizations from across the Americas and the Caribbean. Today, we will be talking about temporary protected status and the recent developments impacting TPS holders, like myself. I am a TPS holder from El Salvador. There are several countries designated with this relief. These are Syria, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, Nicaragua, Nepal, Honduras, Haiti, El Salvador, and Yemen. A panel of experts and immigration lawyers will help us understand the state of the program and what TPS holders should do. On behalf of Alianza Americas, I would like to thank to the organizations that are with us here today and to our panelists and community and the community and the viewers that are just joining us on this Facebook Live and in Alianza Americas YouTube channel. I am very honored to share this conversation tonight with the following panelists. Diana Konaté, she is the Policy Director of African Communities Together. Abel Nuñez, Executive Director of CARECEN of Washington, D.C. Laura Sanchez, Legal Director of CARECEN San Francisco. Oscar Chacon, Executive Director of Alianza Americas. Mony Ruiz-Velasco, Associate Director of Alianza Americas and Immigration Lawyer. And myself, the National Campaigns Manager of Alianza Americas. Alianza Americas decided to host this conversation in support of the TPS, the National Week of Action in support of TPS, organized by African Communities Together, UndocuBlack, ADICAR, Haitian Brits Alliance, CASA, and Alianza Americas. Today, we will talk about why we're here, common terms that our panelists are going to be using, what are the decisions impacting TPS holders, who is impacted by this decision, what are the next steps for a lawsuit in support of TPS holders and our families regarding the case known as Ramos versus Nielsen, and what communities can do today. There's a lot of things happening, and there is a lot of need of information. There's perhaps that's causing fear and uncertainty. So the reason of this Facebook Live is to make sure that our viewers, if you're a TPS holder from the countries that we just mentioned, that you walk out of this conversation with information, but most of all, that you ask questions and send your comments via our Facebook Live, by our Facebook page, and our panelists will take those questions. How this is going to work, each of the panelists will respond some of the questions that we already have for them. And once they're done, we're going to be taking and looking into the questions and comments that you will send. Now, before to start, I would like to ask Diana from AD, please tell us why we're here today.
Thanks, Yanira, and hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. As Yanira mentioned, my name is Diana Konaté. I'm with African Communities Together, and I'm going to kick us off with why we're here. So, you know, a lot of us know that the Ramos decision came out last week, but that really wasn't the only blow to the TPS community. There was also in August a policy change that also impacts TPS holders. And so we're here today to provide those updates to the community, to let folks know how it impacts them, so that people have the information, so that there's not any fear out there, and so that people are educated about where we are with TPS, both as a result of Ramos and as a result of the recent policy change from USCIS.
Thank you, Diana. Mony, through the conversation, you, Diana, Abel, Laura, and Oscar will be referring to some words or terms. Can you help us understand some of the key terms that you and everyone will be referring to?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm really happy to be here with everyone tonight. And we want to make sure that people understand some of these terms as we'll be using them throughout the conversation. One of those terms and one of the agencies that we're going to be talking a lot about is what is called USCIS, or U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And that is the part of immigration that basically processes applications and that including green card applications, TPS applications. It's the benefits giving side of immigration. We're also obviously talking about TPS, or temporary protected status, which is a status that can be granted to people from countries when there is something like civil unrest, or there is a natural environmental catastrophe, or other extreme circumstances. And some people have been in this TPS status that we're going to talk about for many, many years and decades. We're also going to be talking about advanced parole, which is basically a mechanism or a permission that people can get when they don't have necessarily a green card, or they're not citizens, and they want to travel outside of the US and come back. So for people in TPS, they're able to request permission from USCIS, so from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, permission to travel outside the country and come back. We're going to be talking also about adjustment of status, which is the process for applying for a green card here in the United States. We're also going to talk about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a federal court that's based in California, that issued the Ramos decision that we're going to be talking about. And it's one of the federal courts that is kind of the middle level court, that then the next level would be the Supreme Court when you go up and appeal cases from there. The other thing we'll talk about is the Federal Register, which is, it used to be a book, but now it's online, and it's basically where the government publishes rules and information that they want people to know about. But rules and regulations are published in this Federal Register, and that's how people have an opportunity to comment and read about them. And then sometimes we talk about people who entered the country without inspection, or EWI, EWI, and that's people who entered the U.S. without having a valid visa at the time of their entry, or without being inspected by an immigration officer at an official port of entry, like an airport or a checkpoint at the border. So people who entered in an irregular way. So those are kind of the more common terms, and hopefully as we talk, the panelists will also come back to the definitions, but we just wanted to put them out there initially so we can all be on the same page.
Thank you, Mony. And for the viewers, if you didn't understand some of the information that Mony just provided, please send us comments or questions. There have been several changes within the immigration procedures or protocols. Laura, can you help us understand what's happening? What happened in December 2019 and recently in August 2020 that it's creating a lot of anxiety and uncertainty among some TPS holders?
Thank you, Yanira. As mentioned, my name is Laura Sanchez. I'm the legal director of CARECEN San Francisco. You are correct. Recently, USCIS has published and released 2 memos that remove options for TPS beneficiaries who may have been considering adjusting their status to legal permanent residency, or better known as becoming green card holders. The first one was in December of 2019. USCIS published a memo that stated people with TPS who were in TPS status who had prior deportations or were in deportation proceedings known as immigration court, who traveled with advanced parole, would be considered in the same situation or status upon their return. So this basically means the travel and then the legal entry would have no impact on their prior deportation, so they were still considered in proceedings. The interesting thing with this is, as a continuation of their interpretation of the law, USCIS came out with their memo this August. With this new memo, USCIS has now changed their policy that basically says that TPS beneficiaries who travel outside the United States and enter with advanced parole documents are now not considered inspected or admitted by immigration. This is a big change to previous USCIS policy and unfortunately has an immediate impact to TPS holders. TPS holders are now not able to use the entry on advanced parole to qualify for adjustment of status.
Thank you, Laura. That took us to the first question, which is who is impacted by the USCIS memos? I am a TPS holder, as I said at the beginning, but please help us understand who's going to be impacted.
So basically, any TPSer who was planning on using their travel on advanced parole to be able to adjust their status in the United States or apply for the green card is impacted. So unfortunately, this is no longer an option for anyone who travels after August 20th, 2020, and this is when the memo came out.
And what is the impact of this policy change?
That's a really good question. So up until recently, USCIS considered that when a TPSer or TPS holder re-entered with advanced parole, this last entry was the entry that controlled so that they would be considered admitted and inspected. So basically, a TPSer would be able to use this last lawful entry to meet, as I previously stated, a requirement to apply for a green card. Of course, there's other options, like they have to have an immediate family member be able to move forward on a family petition. The most common I see is a TPSer who might have a U.S. citizen child who's above the age of 21 that does a family petition on their behalf. There's other requirements, like they can't have criminal issues, which isn't an issue with TPSers generally. They have to show that they don't have any public health issues, and of course, public charge is now a concern, unfortunately. Unfortunately, now we have these memos that reinterpret that last entry, and so that has an impact on whether a TPSer can move forward on their adjustment of status. I think it's also important to note, though, that if TPSers who reside in the 6th Circuit and the 9th Circuit, they do have an alternative option. The 6th Circuit and the 9th Circuit have found that TPS status, or the grant of TPS, is an admission at the point that someone's given a TPS status, and so therefore they still meet the requirement of being considered admitted and inspected so that they can qualify for their green card or apply for a green card inside the United States, I should say.
Thank you, Laura. That's been very helpful. If you have, if the viewers have questions regarding the 2 questions that Laura just answered, and you still have some comments, please send it via our Facebook Live. Abel, what else do I need to know about these memos?
Thank you, Yanira. Thank you for inviting me here today. So I think that part of what we need to know is that this doesn't impact every TPS beneficiary. There's a specific group of people that it impacts. And you have to know that the first thing that I would say, and it's very important, that you consult with a legal provider. And you will hear me repeat that over and over again, because every case is very particular, about what you may or may not be able to do. But in general terms, basically, if you were granted advanced parole, you can travel outside of the country and come back. But that means that your status remains the same as it did before. Nothing has changed according to this new memos, except for what Laura said, that in some circuits are there, which primarily are West Coast states. And I don't know, Laura, if you want to talk about which states those apply, because those are different than East Coast or the South, which are different.
Please,
Yes.
Laura.
So the 9th Circuit, yes, it's primarily West Coast, Southwest, and the 6th Circuit, and I should have researched this, I can tell you right now, also is within that area. But that's actually Eastern District of, it's in the area of Kentucky, in Eastern District of that part of the United States, but it's Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee.
Thank you. Thank you for it.
It is a very particular parts of regions within the United States, and unfortunately, it does not apply across the United States.
Thank you, Laura. What does Abel, what does implementation of this policy looks like? And you're muted.
Yes. Yes. So for the TPS beneficiaries, nothing really changes for them. I mean, in terms of their daily life, they still have TPS. But what it looks like is when they do apply, because they have consulted with a legal counsel and they've been told that they have the ability to adjust because of a family petition, and they're using advance parole as a way to be able to have an entrance without inspection in their record so that they can adjust, then that's when it won't happen, right? So that's what the law states, that you will remain in the same status as before. And we have to remember that many TPS members entered before they got TPS were undocumented or actually had orders of removal. But TPS protects them from deportation. And so advance parole was used as a mechanism to override that order of deportation. But again, the way it's implemented is that now when you're going to adjust and the adjudicators get the application for the person being petitioned, the TPS beneficiary being petitioned, it will get rejected, particularly anything after August 20th, 2020.
Thank you, Abel. And again, for our viewers, we're discussing the recent developments on temporary protected status. If you have questions regarding the information that our panelists are sharing, please send us a comment in the comment section of this Facebook Live. We are also broadcasting in the Alianza Americas YouTube channel. I would like to bring Mony to the conversation. Mony, does this mean that the people with TPS are no longer eligible for a green card? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Sorry. And I think this is a good question because people do get very confused when they hear like who's eligible, who's not, or maybe this makes me ineligible. But this definitely does not mean that everyone is not ineligible for a green card. So that means some people continue to be eligible. Like Laura said, there are some states where there are specific rules, and then also people who enter the country with inspection, with a visa, who meet all the other requirements that we talked about, they continue to be eligible. So again, it's important to check with an attorney, a trusted attorney or organization that gives legal advice, is authorized to give legal advice, to make sure that people understand their own circumstance.
Is this a change in the immigration law?
No, it's not a change in the law. And I think what's really important to note is that the law had been applied and interpreted in a particular way for many years, and people with TPS had been able to benefit from advanced parole in order to get green cards. However, this is just simply a change in policy. So it means that the current administration decided they were going to apply the law in a different way. And this is exactly why we like to remind people that elections really matter and that it's really important to get out to vote, because there are decisions that are made by people that we vote for, people that are put in power, that impact people's lives every day. So we really want to encourage people to be informed about voting and get out to vote.
Thank you, Mony. And for those who would like to learn a little bit more, and the website that we're going to be sharing in the comments, although it's in Spanish, we can as well refer to other websites from our members, Copal Minnesota, Florida Immigrant Coalition. They have bilingual websites where they are mobilizing the community, encourage them to register to vote and to vote. To get more information, please visit our website, alianzaamericas.org. Diana, I would like to bring you to the conversation, and you and your organization are part of the plaintiffs for the case that is known Krista Ramos versus Nelson. The question for you is, does TPS still exist after the case of Ramos versus Nelson? We just, in September 14, we heard a decision from a court in California. Please help us understand what just happened.
Sure. And to be sure, TPS still exists, and everybody who currently has TPS still has TPS. I'll go through what happened with the decision. So essentially, when we filed the lawsuit against the government, we made two claims. The first claim was that the Trump administration terminated TPS in violation of what's known as the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA, and it violated that law because the administration changed its policy on how it was going to extend TPS without actually following proper procedures. The court, in that argument that we made, the court said that it didn't have the authority to review that claim. So it didn't make a decision on that. The second claim that we made in the lawsuit was that the administration made its decision to terminate TPS. That decision was based on racial animus. So that decision was made based on racism, essentially. And what the court found on that claim was that even though Trump had made racist comments in the past, and even though the White House was involved in the termination of TPS, there wasn't, it found that there wasn't actual evidence that Trump's racism was the exact reason for the termination. So it allows the Trump administration to terminate TPS, but TPS has not been terminated yet. People still have TPS, and they still have it right now until January 4th. But the earliest, based on the suit, the earliest that it would get terminated is in March 2021 for a lot of the countries, and then for El Salvador in particular, because of an agreement between the U.S. government and the government of El Salvador, that's going to be even longer, so till November 2021.
Thank you, Diana. Can you, in a couple of sentences, tell us a little bit about the plaintiffs?
Sure. So the plaintiffs in the lawsuit are individuals with TPS from the countries that are impacted. So the Ramos lawsuit, the countries in that case are Sudan, Haiti, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. In addition to those four countries, there was another case called Bataray that was also attached to this case. So those countries also are impacted by this case, and those countries are Nepal and Honduras. So all of the TPS holders from those countries are essentially impacted by the Ramos decision, and those are the plaintiffs in both of the suits. In Ramos, in addition to their are you guys hearing that sound? Sorry, I don't know where it's coming from, but is it me? I'm sorry. Yes, so the plaintiffs in those suits are the individuals from those countries, and a lot of them are members of our various organizations. They are people who have been in this country for many years, some well over 20 years. They've been living in the US, working in the US. They have families here. They have US born children. And it's people who want want an opportunity to be able to continue the lives that they've built here in the U.S. And this case gave them, some protection. But, at the end of the day, the only institution that can give them permanent protection is Congress. But we continue to fight, and, we're not done with the Ramos litigation. We continue on.
Thank you, Diana. And we appreciate all the efforts that your organization have been doing for the past year regarding the Ramos case and all the plaintiffs. As I said, I am a TPS holder, and that's what it's been giving us time since the administration decided to terminate the relief against the deportation and the associated benefit of the work permit authorizations. So again, for everyone who is tuning in this conversation, Diana was just explaining what happened on September 14, what a court in California, in Southern California, recently communicated regarding the case of known as Ramos versus Nelson. Please send us your comments or questions, and just to rest assured that TPS is alive. On September 14, there was no decision telling us TPS holders to go home. No, TPS continue to be alive. And as Diana mentioned, we are the organizations, TPS holders and allies. We continue to fight, and we continue to take action to make sure that Congress do its job. I would like to move with Oscar. What is the political background behind this decision?
Well, thank you, Yanira. First of all, I'm glad to be here with you all, and I'm glad to be able to share with the people who have tuned in some of the political context. And the first thing I want to say is more of a clarification. I mean, the Salvadorian government has indeed claimed that because of their good relationship with the Trump administration, they were able to get Salvadorians a little more of a break in as far as a potential ending date of TPS. However, the official explanation granted by Department of Homeland Security has more to do with the number of Salvadorians that are actually recipients of temporary protected status. Just for the record, I mean, there are nearly 200,000 Salvadorians, making them by large the biggest group of nationals that are going to be affected or potentially affected about these implications coming from this decision. So I just wanted to also share that perspective. But on your question, Yanira, the first thing I really want to highlight is the fact that the drama that TPS holders are facing today, it's all related to how profoundly obsolete our laws are in the US when it comes to laws that should have protected people from a humanitarian point of view, laws that are more related to the overall immigration policy of this country, that, as I said, I mean, are just deeply obsolete, deeply unjust. And that is a very important factor to keep in mind. If every one of the nationalities affected by this decision had actually been in a country that has kept up to date humanitarian protection laws, all these people would not have any problems today. They would all be by now probably even naturalized US citizens, because they should have gotten humanitarian protection in the form of asylum, and they should have been able to qualify for legal permanent residency shortly after. So that's an important factor that I like to make sure we understand. It is very much in the background. The second thing is that ending programs like TPS is very much part of what I call the war against immigrants and refugees that several governments have explicitly or implicitly embraced over the past several decades. And this administration, the Trump administration, has been extremely open about how much they want to get rid of people they consider undesirable. And in this respect, ending programs like TPS, which is what they really want to do, just as much as ending programs like DACA, is simply one aspect of this war against immigrants that they don't like. You know, immigrants of color and all of the nationalities involved here are actually people who are essentially non-white immigrants in the US. The third thing I want to highlight is that this particular development indeed opens up the possibility of seeing nearly 400,000 people potentially be sent back to countries that are far away from being prepared to receive people coming back from the US. Particularly now, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, the reality of these countries is simply a lot worse than it was even just at the beginning of this year. But again, keep in mind, the majority of these countries are countries that are not able to provide employment to most people, that are not able to provide healthcare, adequate education, and even basic security, to the point that a lot of people from countries like El Salvador and Honduras have been actively running away for their lives, you know, in these countries, because safety is simply not something that the governments there can guarantee. And I think that that's very important to understand. I also want to highlight the fact that TPS recipients are people with deep roots in the US. Most of them have been here for well over 20 years. They have raised families in the US. They are very much part of the social, economic, cultural fabric of the country. And they clearly represent a group of population that would be severely affected by family separation if the implications of this particular decision were to indeed reach its worst possible consequences. And the last thing I want to say is that the decision also highlights the level of hypocrisy that exists in the way our laws are judged, you know, by the judicial system, let alone by the Congress. The very people that have been very much known as so-called essential workers are many TPS holders. And yet, even though we believe that essential workers are so important in the time of a pandemic, we are very much prepared to indeed see these people potentially be deported to their countries. And the very last thing I want to say, echoing something that Mony mentioned briefly, elections do matter and elections do have consequences. I believe that something we all can do is entice everyone we know who happens to be a US citizen, with an age able to work, and who is registered to vote, to actually do it. Because it is so important that we make wise choices in this upcoming election, because the reason why immigration has so much space to make decisions, so much latitude to actually come out with memos like the ones that Laura was describing, is because of a law that was passed in 1996 that granted ample discretion to the federal executive branch of government to basically decide on these matters. So all are reasons that should indeed make us all be aware that we must exercise our right to vote, and to exercise that right wisely in a way that leads us to see people who are more reflective of the interest of our communities become office holders, including the presidency. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Oscar. In a few lines here, the thing is, the battle is not lost. We still have a lot to do, particularly to influence the public discourse, to engage and encourage the population that can go out and vote. But also, I know that the litigators and the plaintiffs, such as African Communities Together, are ready to appeal for the Ramos case, and there are several other lawsuits. Can you briefly, Oscar, tell us about one of the lawsuits that we often like to highlight because it represents the work of one of our organizational members, and I'm referring to the Centro, Presente versus Trump. Briefly, in a couple of sentences.
Very briefly, I mean, and I want to emphasize what others have already said. I mean, we have not come to the end of the road. I mean, we have come to a bump, and I think it is important to understand that there are definitely other lawsuits that are still pending to actually be considered by other jurisdictions in the judicial system in the US. One of them is indeed Centro Presente versus Trump. We are hopeful that there could still be remedies that may result from the lawsuits that are still pending. I also believe that it is important to point out, if we were to see a shift in the in who occupies the White House as a result of the November 3rd elections, it is highly likely that if a Democratic government comes in, that new administration may well decide to do something immediately to actually help keep TPS recipients protected until the Congress finds the wisdom and the guts to actually change the law in a way that reflect, the best values of the United States of America. And I believe that people who are DACA or TPS recipients would be very much in line to receive some sort of relief, not anymore in the form of keeping them as temporary guests in the country, but as legal permanent residents, which is what they, in practical terms, have already become.
Thank you. Again, for if you are just tuning in these conversations, we are discussing TPS and the recent developments, changes in policies impacting TPS holders. If after listening to all of this great information, you might be asking, what do we do now? Can we do something? And everyone in this panel is being highlighting the fact that this is not done yet from the side of TPS holders, our families, and our allies, but also that we are very conscious who has right now the power to do something right away and protect TPS holders. But also we have mentioned that in November, in a few days, in 40-something days, we will be seeing the mobilization of millions of people using their vote to speak on different matters that are close to the hearts of the American voters. But also, we are here to tell you that TPS is on the ballot, that DACA is on the ballot. And for that, I would like to bring my colleague Mony and to finish this portion of the conversation on what we do now. Mony, what we do now? You're muted.
I'm unmuted. Okay, there we go. I think what continues to be really important that I think we've all been saying is that people need to stay engaged. People need to stay connected to organizations in their area. They need to stay organized. And coming out to vote is, one really important thing that is coming up that has the potential, like we've all said, to really change lives and impact how all of these decisions are made. There are several opportunities where Congress is coming together. One of them is going to be coming together around the budget in December, and they have an opportunity and they have an obligation to really respond to this situation. And so we really encourage people to call their members of Congress and tell them that in December, they will have an opportunity to do something to protect folks with TPS, and that time is running out, right? That it's not, like we've said over and over again, that people's TPS ended with the decision of the Ninth Circuit, but it is Congress's time to act this year is running out. And they have an opportunity again in December. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for people to be engaged, for people to get out to vote, to get their family members out to vote, everybody that they know, their neighbors, their friends who can vote, to come out and vote, and to make sure they're informed voters so that we are able to work together and collectively for the betterment of our communities.
Thank you, Mony. In the topic of the vote, I know that right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes just right now here in this conversation, speaking on behalf of TPS, and I am a TPS holder. I cannot vote, but I do see here 5 votes speaking in support of TPS holders, our families, and DACA recipients. But we have been working very hard Each of the organizations represented in this conversation have been working every single day, meeting with members of Congress in the district offices, meeting in Washington, D.C., mobilizing in actions in different spaces to make sure that we impact the public opinion, that voters and allies understand the impacts of deporting TPS holders. After so many years, TPS has been in place since the 90s. It's a law that it's been available, a relief that is being available and it's used by the U.S. government to provide the relief. And it's after 30 years that finally, after the pressure of organizations, African organizations, Haitian organizations, Salvadoreños, Hondureños, Nicaraguenses, and many people advocating for TPS right now, since the administration started the attack against TPS holders and our families, is that we were able to have the House of Representatives to pass H.R. 6 or the Dream and Promise Act. It passed the House. It was a great victory, but still the Senate is not speaking. So this is why we said what we do now. There are several options, just like a menu. When you go to a restaurant, you have options that you can choose. And from that option, you said, I want this. So we already gave a menu to the Senate what to do. They can choose from H.R. 6 that can give relief, permanent residency for TPS and DACA recipients. Or they have the Secure Act, which is another bill that is in the Senate that hasn't moved through the House yet because hasn't been discussed in the Senate. Or there is another bill, which it's the HEROES Act, was voted in favor in the House of Representatives in May 15. May, and to this date is September 25th, and the Senate is not discussing this. What we can do then is use our stories as TPS holders, show the urgency, the impacts that the deportation and the family separation will cause, not just in our families, but in our communities. We have been here, the average TPS holders have been in the United States for more than 20 years. Those are deep roots. It's not about just deporting Yanira. It's not about deporting a single TPS holder. It's disrupting entire communities, disrupting how the fiber of the United States function. The other thing that we can do is as well to make sure that we have this conversation with the communities in our countries of origin, presidents of El Salvador, Sudan, Haiti. Everyone needs to be speaking up. They have as well the power to give a call to President Trump, to give a call to Leader Pelosi or Leader McConnell. Presidents from the countries affected by this decision can do something, but if we put pressure as TPS holders. What else we can do? If you're people of faith, make sure that you have these conversations within your faith community and engage them, because they are as well not just active voters, but also members of communities that are contributing where we live. At the end of the day, thinking on how every single person has connections in different environments, we can activate and have these conversations with everyone that knows you, that knows me, and make sure that we are in the right side of history. Please, I would like to bring as well to Diana, Abel, and Laura, because your organization have been very active. Please share with our audience what else they can do to be active and be part of the several steps, because there are a lot of things that we can do to continue to fight to remain here. I'm going to start with Diana.
Sure, thank you. I think what's very important is for TPS holders to be engaged. you know, it's not enough for the advocates to be going to the Hill and talking to members of Congress. Members of Congress really need to hear stories from TPS holders, from impacted communities about how this is impacting their everyday lives, what this means for their families, for their communities, and how, you know, this uncertainty just creates a lot of, it leads to lives that are not stable. And I think people really need to hear those stories. And we need to have TPS holders that continue to engage. So that's one of the ways that I think it could be helpful as we continue to fight for permanent status.
And for that, please give us where TPS holders or loved ones from African communities or Haitian communities can contact you to your website or the groups that have been organizing.
Sure. So we have been organizing African TPS holders. And if any African TPS holders would like to reach out to us, feel free to find us on our website, which is www.africans.us. And on that website, you'll be able to find our contact information, our email, our phone numbers, and reach out to us. You know, I think one of the benefits of being involved with organizations like all of ours is that you don't have to be going through this by yourself. You have a community of other TPS holders who understand your struggle, who are right there with you, can help you, can provide you with information when you need it, can be a listening ear, people who really understand what your struggle is. And I think that helps. And additionally, I think it helps when people know that there are people out here fighting, that, you know, we're just not gonna lay down and let this, you know, go. I think that helps. So I think that anybody who's not involved in any of the organizations here, definitely reach out and get involved, get plugged in. There's also, for those who are Haitian TPS holders, reaching out to Haitian Bridge Alliance. That is one of the Haitian organizations that we often partner with. There's also Haitian Women for Haitian Refugees out of New York. So those are just some of the organizations that help Black immigrants with TPS. But you know, there are a lot other, you know, there are other organizations out there. We just really encourage people to reach out. Don't go through any of this by yourself. There are resources available. There's information out there, and there's people who are willing to fight with you.
Thank you, Diana. Laura, if someone is in California or the Bay Area, please tell them how to look for and get activated.
One thing you can do is you can connect with Carecen San Francisco. You can go to Carecen's website, which is Carecen, CARECEN-SF.org. And then from there, we can connect you to the advocacy efforts that we're doing on the West Coast, on California, in particular in the Bay Area. Or if you live in Southern California, we can connect you to partners that are working tirelessly down in Southern California. And I think also I really want to emphasize, Abel had talked about this as well, is definitely get a consultation. Even if you had gotten a consultation of your immigration options, and perhaps that was earlier this year, as you can tell, many things have unfortunately developed in the middle of the summer since then. And so it definitely merits getting another consultation to see your options, because even though this administration is trying to take away options, there's still options. And so I think with more information and education, there's power within that. And just to know, okay, well, these are the routes that my future may hold, but, you know, doing that informed and knowing, you know, what those next steps could potentially be. Carecen San Francisco, I know all the Carecens all across the United States are providing consults for TPSers. We have a long history of providing services to TPSers. So we can definitely update the community and do individual consults to let
Thank you,
know what are
Laura.
y'all.
And Laura, just remind us that there are several things that TPS holders should be doing right now. First of all, let's get informed. Let's be educated about what's happening, know our rights, and how to defend our rights. What Laura just described is a lot of knowing, defending the rights, but also do not take rush decisions. And Diana mentioned another very important part. Be part of the movement. Get organized and make sure that you are part of a big community. I wouldn't be able to speak like this without the support of organizations like them, or feeling as well empowered and being informed about what's happening and to whom we need to be putting pressure. And the last thing on this is be careful with scams. And soon I'm going to be giving the space to one of our partners to answer that, to go more in details. But before that, Abel, please let us know if someone is in the DC, Maryland, or Virginia, what they can do to be activated.
No, definitely. I think I can echo everything that folks have said here on this panel. The reality is that first, at the individual level, definitely contact your legal provider. But beyond just contacting them for your own personal reasons, that is the way you get connected, to larger sort of cases. So when we think of Ramos versus Nielsen, those are actual TPS members that, Ramos is an actual person that as part of that lawsuit, and again, there are multiple lawsuits. There's one here in Maryland, and actually Carecen DC actually is suing the Trump administration specifically on the advance parole issue. And it's not just Carecen, but it's 7 additional other TPS beneficiaries that have been impacted by this new change of the administration. So connecting to organizations that have a reputation of doing quality service in the community is highly important. There are many people out there that try to take advantage. The famous public notaries that the income tax preparers that do immigration and do 1,000 other things. The reality that they're part of our community but they confuse that, and sometimes they get people in trouble. So I think that organizations like our Carecen, you can come to our website, carecendc.org. We can connect you to different efforts that are happening, to legal counsel if you need so. But I think this is not the time to sit around and wait. This is the time to take action.
Thank you, Abel. And now that I have you, can you please briefly mention about the lawsuit that Carecen of Washington, D.C. it's part regarding the memos that Laura helped us understand at the beginning of the conversation?
Yes, so our lawsuit is one that is in partnership with Clinic, which is a Catholic Legal Immigration Network, and Democracy Forward, together with 7 other TPS beneficiaries that we're suing both Cuccinelli, who was the acting director of immigration during the change of the policy, Wolf, who is the acting director of DHS. We are suing them because we believe that, one, they did not have the ability to make those changes, and simply put, they were placed in their interim position illegally. There is a process by which a person is put in charge of a government agency in an interim basis, and the Trump administration has violated that. And so our basic the lawsuit basically argues that they can't even make any changes when they weren't officially authorized to be in those positions. And if we're successful, it really questions all of the decisions that Cuccinelli in his function, in his role as interim director, has taken, has done over his tenure. So it's very important for us to continue. That's how we connect to organizations. So we encourage all the listeners to please connect to organizations to see if you can be part of lawsuits and if you can be part of other efforts.
Thank you, Abel. And it's very important to understand that these are the several things that we can still be doing. Again, this is just, as Oscar mentioned, is a bump. But if you're a TPS holders and you have been here for over 20 years, or no matter how many years, you know that it hasn't been easy to make sure that you continue to provide for your loved ones in the United States, but also in your country of origin. So what we're speaking here is to defending our dignity. And when we are defending our dignity, that's what is going to keep us moving forward and creating these bridges of collaboration. Every single TPS holder has the right to understand that we have rights, but also, even if we haven't been born here, we can do a lot to continue to defend our dignity. Our dignity is the most valuable thing that we can defend. Yes, we contribute at the economy, but our dignity is what it's more important. Oscar, I don't know if you would like to add anything else regarding to why TPS holders and allies we need to be activated right now in organizing before getting into the closing of the conversation.
No, Yanira, I just want to echo what others said. I mean, I think that if anybody thinks that alone they're going to be able to overcome the obstacles, they're going to not find, what we are looking for. The solutions come by way of becoming organized, becoming engaged in protest, becoming engaged in policy advocacy. I mean, not everything is about a march, not everything is about a picket line. Sometimes what it takes is actually go visit, your members of Congress, go visit your mayors, go visit your governors. Because one thing that we have found is that to this day, a lot of people in elected office do not know what TPS is and do not know who TPS recipients are. And the more people we can actually educate, make aware of this situation, the easier that it will be to keep fighting and to keep our communities engaged and keep our communities safe.
Thank you. Diana, can you give us in a closing, what is it that we've been saying for the past hour regarding what it means, what this moment means for TPS holders and our loved ones?
Sure. So as we end, just two quick reminders to everybody. One, everybody still has TPS. Ramos did not do away with TPS for anybody. So, people still have their status. TPS holders cannot face deportation this year. Folks are still entitled to their driver's license. People's work authorization is still valid. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, terminations, the earliest that terminations can go into effect is March 2021 for folks from Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and Sudan, and November 2021 for TPS holders from El Salvador. So we just really want to make sure that there's no fear in the community, and make sure that people understand that you do have rights and you do have a community with you as we continue to fight for permanent status for TPS holders. So that's the first reminder. And the second reminder is that everybody needs to vote.
Thank you, Diana. And again, as I said, you see 5 people here, but multiply the networks that each of these people have are involved, church, work, school. So I know I have more than 5 votes for TPS down here. So thank you for the work that Carecen of Washington, D.C., African Communities Together, Carecen of San Francisco is doing as well, and Alianza Americas. I have to highlight that the organization I work for. We are going to be posting in the comment section of this Facebook Live a link to the Federal Register that continue to be valid or current until we hear from the USCIS or DHS issuing a new guidance or a new Federal Register telling us how the department will be proceeding after the decision of the Ramos case. Also, I am posting this other link for my colleague Jancy to post. Is the site for the LCLU of Southern California to keep an eye, because the Ramos case will be still around. They will be discussing next steps. If you would like to follow what's next on the Ramos case, that's the site to check. But also, please visit alianzaamericas.org or follow us on Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram to keep up to date on not just on TPS, but the different issues that we cover. Again, thank you to our panelists. Very grateful. Again, as I said, I wouldn't be saying this or doing this without the support of organizations like you. I encourage everyone who's listening this conversation to feel as well supported, that you have a community, as Diana said, a community with, behind you, around you, and with you. So the fight is not over. The only thing that is missing is you. We need you in this conversation. We need you organized. We need you inform on what's happening. We don't want you to take rush decisions. We don't want you to be packing bags. We are not going anywhere. We have to be fighting every single day. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to my colleague Jancy Nuñez for the support in the tech part right now. Thank you very much, and everyone have a great night.
Good night. Thank you.